late. My name is Scott Mendenhall. This week we are recording. I can see the red light on the back, so it should be on our website at some point this week. Today is just a standalone teaching to get us started on the idea of what are we doing with the new decade. But I'm calling it, or my thought in it when I was running this week, I was like, man, what's a good thought for a pre-New Year's conversation? Because we're going to kick off a new series next week that we're going to spend quite a bit of time in, and we'll let you know what that is. If you get our emails, you'll know what that is at some point. But we got a cool new series kicking off next week. But this week, you're not a hostage. That's the whole idea. You're not a hostage to last year, or last decade, or all your mistakes you made in high school. You're not a hostage. So stop living like one, okay? That's the idea. You're not a hostage. If you're going to walk out of here today and you're like, what's the overarching idea today? You're not a hostage. Jesus, if you're a follower of Jesus, he came and set you free, okay? If you believe who Jesus is, that the Christmas story and all those things that we just came out of, that if you believe those things and apply them, and you have asked forgiveness of your past, it's gone. So you're not a hostage to it. Yeah, we often walk around and do life as hostages. Like we're handcuffed to our past. And therefore, we don't want to set new goals or new Year's resolutions, because why? I just don't fulfill them. That sounds like a lot like a hostage. I never do it anyways. Or we use other people's excuses. Other people set resolutions and they just don't get it done. And so here, why do it? What's the point? You're not a hostage. In a great illustration, I was like, okay, I like to take life stories, and just reveal a little bit of just who I am. And so here's a story all about how it was when I was 19 years old, I was traveling around. Holly and I were great friends, and I don't think at this point we're dating, but I had an opportunity to go to a small church in Wisconsin and lead worship. And so I was driving a New Yorker, which isn't that great of a car, but it's a New Yorker. It's the car that talked to me. And I drove up there. We had a great time with the students there, got to do the music. And then I'm rolling home, and it's like, 1 a.m., and I'm leaving Wisconsin, and it's like in the middle of nowhere, headed back to Rockford, Illinois, and then to Peoria, Illinois, because that's where at the time where I was living. And so I'm coming through like back country stuff, right? There's no one out. It's 1 in the morning, and all of a sudden, somebody passes me, and they were driving kind of crazy. Like I was like, whoa, that's something not right with that driver. And they just sped off and went on, and I just driving, and all of a sudden the blue and red lights go off. Okay, and I don't know how you handle those, but when I do that, I'm like, 2 hands on the wheel. You sit up, you check your seatbelt, right? You just go through all the things as you slowly pull over, because you know, like, hey, they're gonna come in, and I don't know about you, but when I've been pulled over, the cops always ask the same thing. They must be taught to ask this: do you know why I pulled you over? And every time, the first time it was asked to me in my mind, I was like, what does it matter why I think you pulled me over? It really doesn't. What really matters here is why you pulled me over. If I told you why I thought you pulled me over, I might actually get myself into more trouble. So in my mind, I'm like, just tell me why you pulled me over, because I might go, yeah, I got a taillight out, and they're going to, oh, no, I just wanted you to know that you're doing a great job driving, but because you told me you had a taillight out, I'm going to give you a ticket for that, right? It's like, man, they're good at what they do. And so I just sat there, two hands. I do remember this when I pulled over and put the car over. I always do this. I think somebody told me to do this, especially as a young boy. I just put my hands up like this so they can see, so they don't freak out, because I'm like, I sometimes put my hands out the window just so they just come calm, okay? My hands are right here. And so I think after he asked me, why I pulled you over, he's like, have you ever been arrested? And I was like, nope. Never been arrested. And he goes, hey, we had some reports that you were driving crazy, that you were crossing the center line. And he asked, had you been drinking? I was like, nope. I just left this church in Wisconsin. We did this youth group thing, and I'm on my way home to Peoria. He's like, well, we would like to run some tests. I'm like, okay. He's like, okay, you have the gun. Okay. He's like, would you get out of your car? And so they pull me out of my car, and then, it becomes a scene, right? Like, there's now a dozen cop cars. There's not that many, but there's cop cars everywhere, and they're asking me, touch my finger to my nose, walk a straight line, sing the ABCs, and I sang them in my mind. I just wanted to go, next time, would you please sing them with me? Do the whole deal. In my mind, I was really sassy, but on the outside, I was trying to be, like, just proud of it. They're like, yeah, yeah, we need to take you in and have you do a breathalyzer. I'm like, why? Because I passed everything, you know what I mean? There was no problems. They're like, yeah, we're going to take you in to do a breathalyzer. I'm like, what does this mean? They're like, well, you're going to hop back in your car, which now as an adult, I'm like, wait, you thought I was under the influence and you put me back in my car to follow you to the station? Hello? And so I'm wedged in between the police cars, and we're driving to the police station. We go to the police station. They put me in a desk chair, handcuff me to the chair, and then put me into the cell. Okay, this is real. This is not made up. This is the real deal. I'm handcuffed to a office chair in a cell. Like, how bad of a guy did you think I was that you had to handcuff me and put me in the cell, right? Or is that just, again, Wisconsin, I don't know. It's just like, that's why I got some rubs with Packer fans, I guess. No, but I'm sitting in there. They bring me out. They wheel me to the breathalyzer like, this is how it works. You got to blow for 30 seconds into this thing, and then it will give us a reading. So I get up there. You can't move very well because you're handcuffed to the thing, and you're like, okay, 30 seconds of constant blowing, and you're just, 30 seconds of blowing is like pretty intense. And like at one point I breathed in and like, you're trying to mess up. You rig this thing, aren't you, son? If you don't do this right, we will just arrest you right now. In my mind, I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm arrested, okay? I'm handcuffed to the chair, okay? And I remember at one point they're freaking out on me. They're yelling, getting in my face. They got the Smokey the Bear hat on, like getting in my face, bumping me with the brow and my forehead. And I'm just like, at one point I was like, can I call someone? Like, no one knows where I'm at. Can I just make a phone call? And they're like, no, this is not Hollywood, son. You don't get to make any phone calls. And I'm just a hostage to these. And I'm starting to panic a little bit. No one knows where I am. I'm in the middle of Wisconsin somewhere. I am handcuffed to a desk chair in a cell. I got Smokey the Bear, the police officer, doing his job to the T. He ain't letting me go. I'm like, this is like, what is going on? I got scared. I had no rights anymore. It was just, I was in there. I blew again, and it came back 0. I mean, I was not surprised. I was like, I told you. I was doing music for a church. They're like, we don't believe you. You don't look like a guy that would be in a church. I was like, great. Thank you. And then they put me back in the cell. They go, we're going to wait for 30 minutes, and then you're going to come do this again. And then we're going to wait another 30 minutes, and we're going to have you pee in a cup, because if anything's in your system, it'll have gotten into your urine by now. I'm like, what is going on here? I'm like, finally, I kind of got a little annoyed. I kind of started saying, no, enough is enough. We're not going to do this anymore. I go, I've not done anything wrong. At this point, I've taken the test twice, blowing into about passed out every time, and I've passed zeros across the board. I'm like, I got nothing. I'm not going downtown for nothing. I don't even think there's a downtown here. We're just going to go to somebody's house, and he's like, we have the rights to take your blood and all this. I'm like, great. But that's not happening. You let me call somebody. I sat there. I walked out of that police station at 4 a.m. They held me for 3 hours. When they let me go, one of the officers was kind enough, you could see in his face, he's like, we went too far with this guy. What we did with this little teenager is not okay. He came to me as he walks me to the door, because the big Smokey the Bear guy, he's like, hey, you can go. This is the route I want you to take to go home. And when you don't call anybody, just start heading down the road. It's like, right. When I get back to my car where my cell phone is, I'm calling somebody. And it's like that phone call you call your mom at 4 a.m. Hi, Mom, don't worry. Like, all right, that's like immediately they go like, where are you? I'm like, I think I'm okay. I'm somewhere in Wisconsin. I've been held in a police station for quite some time, and now I'm headed home. And it was before the cell phones actually could GPS you out of there. I pulled out the old paper map, and I was like, I'm finding a different way home. I'm not going the way this dude told me to go, because I was like, he's just going to have somebody else up there to mess around with me. And so I found a different way home, got home. But I had to make a choice at some point to go, okay, enough is enough, guys. In respect, I was never a jerk to them, because after all, they had me handcuffed to a chair. I finally said, hey, guys, no, this is it. We're not doing this anymore. I'm going to go home. I've not done anything wrong. This is okay. Like, let's get it on. As soon as I start standing up for myself, things changed. When you decide to take a stand in your life against the things that have held you hostage, you will begin to take the steps to become less of the victim and more of the victor. But it's got to be a choice. Today is all about a choice. It's a choice where you sit in your life with said topics. Maybe for the last couple of years, you're like, oh, I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to get in a gym. I'm going to start reading these books. I'm just going to be a better version of me because I know that's what honors God in my life. And you've not yet to do that. And you're like, what's the point of trying again this year? Point is it's you taking a step away from being a hostage of whatever that is. If in your mind you have this way of being a certain mom, then go after that. Perhaps that God dropped that in your heart when you became a mom and said, this is where I want you to be as a mom or a dad or as a couple. This is what I want you to go after. And go after it little by little. You'll start to become the thing that God's called you to do. I was a hostage to those police until I decided no longer, hey, I want out. I'm out of here. And still, as I tell this story, like it's like a movie being played in my mind. I remember to a T because how scared I was. Because I was like, I have no idea I had watched enough movies, right? Movies sometimes ruin you. But I just was, no, I'm not going to be hostage. Which reminds me of a story that author John records. But before I do that, I got a couple things. This is a total rabbit trail, but I learned this week, okay? A couple things. These are just highlighted things I learned this week. One, that Jude, okay, there's a book in the Bible called Jude. It's right before James in Revelation, Jude. I didn't know Jude was Jesus' half-brother as well, was brothers to James. That's pretty cool if you think about it. Two of Jesus' half-brothers wrote books in the Bible, and it should also validate that Jesus who he said he is because brothers wrote about and gave their life to their brother, and they died for him. And history shows to both James and Jude that they were not followers of Jesus while Jesus was doing his ministry. It wasn't until Jesus died and rose again. Thought that was pretty cool. I don't know how I missed that. Somewhere, some professor is angry at me for not remembering that in their class. Like, why did I only remember James was? I have no idea. But or this week, bam, it dropped in my lap. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. Second thing, just this week, as I was reading different things, I don't know how I even put this together. That Luke, Dr. Luke in the Bible, is the only one that records the virgin birth. Okay, he talks about it. The others talk about Jesus being born and things of that nature, but never talk about the virgin birth. Luke comes along and says, I put everything in here to record the accounts of everything. And I'm going to put in some of those things because when Luke wrote his book that he wrote, it was after Jesus' death and resurrection. That was the thing, right? People became followers of Jesus not because of the virgin birth, but because Jesus had died and rose again. That's the game changer in everything with Jesus. And Luke could have said, I'm just not going to put that detail in there because that seems a little hoaxy. That seems a little like crazy. But because people had already seen and learned of Jesus' death and resurrection, he's like, hey, this is game-changer information. That they are becoming followers of Jesus because he died and rose again, but the story is that, look, it was foretold here in Luke. I just thought that was pretty cool. That's like Luke records it. He's the one that talks about it. The other ones might allude to it, but he gives like this happen. It's just pretty powerful stuff. Pretty cool stuff when you read that stuff. Again, Luke, yeah, I just thought, to me, those were aha moments. They're not in my notes. It just popped in my brain. 2 things I learned this week. There you go. But John, the one that Jesus loves, by John saying, he wrote a story that really happened. He was an eyewitness account, and this is in chapter 8, verse 2. I'll read a bit of it, and then I'll jump in and put pieces together. We might have it up here. At dawn, he appeared again in the temple court, where all the people gathered around him, and he sat down to teach them. He, being Jesus, he went to the temple courts and just began teaching people about how to love your neighbor, how to one another each other, how to serve one another, how to not judge one another, how to be in a race for second place, not first place. These are the things, these are Jesus' principles. Jesus sitting in the courtyard talking. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery, and they made her stand before the group. So they're bringing this woman in, caught in. If you're familiar with the story, you know these details, but like caught in the act of. This isn't like we heard rumors of. Nope, we saw her going into the man's house, and she was in the act of committing adultery. The law was that she was to be stoned to death, killed. That's the law. Anyone that committed adultery, that's the price of it. So these religious men, they begin to bring this woman in front of Jesus and then the other people in the temple court. And they bring her in, they made her stand before their group, and they said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law of Moses commands us to stone such women. Now, what do you say? So they're trying to say, okay, Jesus, where are you at on this? Do you think we should follow the law? They're trying to get Jesus in trouble. They're always looking for a reason to arrest Jesus and to build a case up against that Jesus is not the person that he said he is. So, and again, I'm giving you the details that John says. They were using this question to trap him in order on a basis of accusing him. But Jesus bent down and started to write in the ground with his finger. No one knows what he was writing there. Maybe it's just a line in the sand that says, and he says this next line when he was writing in the ground. As they kept questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw the stone at her." Again, he stood down and wrote on the ground. At this, those who heard began to go away one at a time. The older one first, until only Jesus was left with the woman sitting or still standing there. Just dropping rocks. They're backing up going, yep, okay, I got you. That's a game changer. It was a game changer. He's trying to say, hey, everybody's got their issues. Everyone is held hostage to something. It's just us taking the time to recognize what it is and then to identify what is holding us hostage and going, how am I going to no longer be a hostage to those things? And so Jesus, in love, turns around to this woman, which, what is he going to say to the woman now? Is he saying it's okay that she was doing what she was doing? This is Jesus' response to the woman. Jesus straightened up and asked her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" "No, sir," she said. "Neither do I condemn you," he declares. "Now go and leave the life of sin." Right there we see Jesus being the Lord and the Savior, the Messiah. The very thing the angel had said in the Christmas story. Hey, he's going to be the Lord and Savior. He came and forgave her. He did not accuse her, but he became the Lord and said, stop that. What is God saying to you that you got to stop? That's holding you hostage. Do you know you don't tell the truth all the time? And you're like, I got to stop exaggerating stuff to make myself look good. I got to stop doing that thing, whatever that thing is. I don't know what it is, and I could sit up here and try to give you illustrations, and most pastors give you like the top three things, right? Stop having sex outside of marriage, stop drinking, and stop doing drugs, right? Then it's like, what do you do, right? It's like, no, I need you to be the wise person you are and to identify the thing that's holding you hostage in your life. Is it something in your marriage you're like, that's just not how I should treat my wife? That doesn't look like love. That's not how I should speak to my children. That's not how I should be as a child. I don't know what it is for you, but this is where God's wanting to come in and say, okay, hey, the same response I had for the woman that was caught into some, bad stuff. I did not tell her she was a dirty, rotten scoundrel. I didn't say you're gross. I didn't say you're nasty to her. I just looked at her and said, okay, hey, I'm not here to accuse you. I'm going to forgive you, but stop it. That's the good news that we talked about the other day. Is that the good news is Jesus comes along and Jesus says, hey, stop. Just stop. And then I wish it was that easy that we hear Jesus say stop, and it's like, yep, great, it's done. Wash my hands of that. No, then it's a journey. And it might take you the entire year on some of these things to beat it. But don't stop fighting. The enemy wants to come along and discourage us and bring us back to being a hostage and all of these things. The enemy doesn't want us to live in the freedom that is promised in the relationship with Jesus. The freedom that is a freedom of our past and those things that we feel guilty of. There is a big difference in what Jesus does in our life and what the enemy does. The enemy comes along and condemns you and me. He comes along and says, you're no good. You're guilty. Guilt is not of God. Now, God comes and convicts. Conviction says, hey, it's time to change. There's no hope for you. You're a lost cause. It's taken 2 decades for you to recognize there was a problem in that area in your life. It's taken you 2 decades. That's not a voice of God. That's the enemy trying to keep you a hostage. The longer you stay a hostage, the less you are to become the thing that God's created you to become. One of the videos today talked about getting rid of the baggage. Maybe another way to say this is not just what's got you held hostage. What's the baggage you keep carrying around? Don't take it into the new decade. But you got to identify it. Like really sitting down, identifying. So the question I got to ask you is not that deep. What are you going to let go of this year? That you recognize has got me. I love walleye fishing. It's just one of those things I enjoy doing. It took me a long time to even catch one. And then it's taken a long ways for me to figure out how to do it. But it was like one of those things, like if it's a challenge, like there's something in me that says I can't be beat. Like I can, but like things that I can control and learn on, I'm like, I got to figure this out. I got to do this. Like, and I'd set out to catch walleye and I'd come home and I caught bass. And I realized that, hey, bass are easy to catch. Anybody can do that, okay? It's like, but I want to catch the walleye. They taste so good. It's like the prime rib of fish, you know? It's like the filet mignon of fish. It's like you want that. I was like, I got to figure it out. And so I started reading on it and figuring out. And some of the best anglers out there talked about the way to catch walleye is this. First, you use the right bait, which is typically live minnows. You hook them where they don't die, and you let it go down to the bottom of the lake. You look for transitions in the lake where on a graph, it would look like mountains down below. The walleye's going to sit where that drop, they're going to sit somewhere right at that drop because they know that there are little fish that are playing games all the time, like how far out do you think you can swim over the deep side? And the walleye's like, you're an idiot, I'm going to eat you. And so then the walleye waits for the little teenage minnow to come out there and gone, right? Well, the point, the idea for the angler is to drag that bait along, and when you feel a tap, to not panic. Is to just sit there and let the fish have it for a moment. Now, as I've taught other people to do this, there's always this tap and rip it out of their mouth, right? And they're like, I got nothing. Like they bring up like a minnow with just a head on the hook, no body, because it was just a short strike. Because walleye, they're a little timid fish, I guess. I don't know. I've never really met one and had a conversation with them. I met a lot, but I ate more of them, right? I never had a conversation with them, right? But like they grab a hold of the bait. And then they swim around a little bit. And they get comfortable with it because they're kind of nervous about stuff. They're like, I don't know if this is going to hurt me. And so they swim around a little bit. And eventually you're going to feel a little tap again. And that means the walleye just swallowed it. Then you, as you feel the double tap, and sometimes that double tap can be quick, but you're always looking for the double tap and hook. And you wind it in. And I was just thinking, as I learned how to catch walleye, and that's the process, like that's a lot how the devil works with us. Is that he uses the right bait for you to tempt you to go get it. And it might be something in your life that at one point you said, I'll never ever do. I will never behave, I'll never treat a person like that. I'll never speak to my wife like that. And all of a sudden, somewhere along the line, you fell for the temptation, you grabbed a hold of the bait, and you're like, I can stop at any point. It's not controlling me, I'm in control of it. And you're sitting there going, I've got it doesn't have me. And just like any good angler knows to that fish that's swimming around going, oh, they're getting comfortable with the bait in their mouth. And I'm going to let them be comfortable. I'm going to give line out. Sometimes, man, the bigger walleye, you give lots of line out. Because you're like, right now, they still got that they're in their mouth. And I'm going to let them go and get real comfortable with it. But as soon as I feel that second little tug, I'm going to set the hook in their mouth. Because if I set it in their lip, it's just going to rip their lip, and I'm going to lose the fish. I set it in the top of their mouth. They can fight all day long. I got them. And that's the same thing with the enemy. The enemy's going to tempt you with something that you're going to get comfortable with. And maybe it's already happening. You get comfortable with, I got this. I can handle this. I can date that person. They're not bringing me down. Their negativity isn't wearing off on me. I'm actually doing better for them than they are for me. I got this. I think anytime we say, I got this, it's scary. Because the enemy's just waiting for that second tap, and he's going to set the hook, and all of a sudden we're hooked, and all of a sudden we're hostage to whatever we said we never would want to be hostage to, and we're just squirming around. What is that for you? The enemy's real good at what he does. One temptation for you might not be a temptation for me. Some of you like chocolate. I don't like chocolate at all. Somebody can put the best, most expensive piece of chocolate on a table, and I look at it, and there's nothing. It's like, that happens for you. You're like, my mouth waters. It's just pouring out of my mouth. I need that chocolate. It's just nothing. You could have the best ice cream, whatever, and it's just like, whatever. It's not a temptation for me, but it is for you. You can't look at it and go, why is that person not struggling with what I struggle with? Because you're an individual. You're uniquely made. But you have to identify the things that have you hostage. And don't look at what they have a bad attitude, so they're hostage to that. That's not your responsibility. That's not up to you. It is to look at and ask yourself, what am I going to let go of this year? What is God calling you to get rid of? And some of you already know. We're not talking about New Year's resolutions. We're talking about in the new year what you're going to do, God asking you to do. Big difference. What are you going to do in the new year now? Let's switch it a little bit. We're asking what you're giving up. What are the things that hold you hostage? What are you going to do with your new year? What are you going to do with your talents? And please don't do this. I don't have any talents. No, what you just are saying to that, you don't have the talents that you wish you had. I wish I could do that, what they do, and I wish I could be like that. But you're not made like them. You don't have the background that they have. You don't have the history. You're not them. So stop wanting what they got. Do with what you got. Perfect example are these guys. If you watched our YouTube video on Christmas, these have been made by Abijah and Andy, and they are great welders. These are like a guy on a one wheel, welded all together, a spark plug here, twists, or I didn't even know it twisted until the other day. Abijah's like, dude, your guy's standing all weird. Why don't you just spin him back? I was like, oh, he spins? That's so cool. Oh, wow, I didn't even know. That's so cool. But I cannot do this. I think it's the coolest thing ever. It's so cool. Like, I was amped that I won the trophy. Just bragging rights there. I just thought I'd bring the trophy from the video that I won, and with the slowest one wheel out of the bunch. And then Abijah gifted this to me. It's a Viking player on a one wheel. Like, he combined two of my worlds. Like, he's got the Viking helmet. He's got, I don't know what these things are called, but they're things welded together to make a football. And I was like, what a great sport. One wheel football? Come on, we got to do this. I was like, this is so magical. Well done, Abijah, creating a sport. I think we should do it. But I look at those and I see two guys, Andy and Abijah, using their talents that I do not possess to bring joy to a guy like me. The talents that you possess might not be what everybody else has, but if you use your talents for good and for others, you will bring joy to other people. So what is it? What do you got in your hands already? What do you got? What are you going to do with it in the new year? I think of people like Abraham. Abraham, he was under... Or Moses, let's start with Moses. We got Moses who grew up in the palace with the Egyptians. Pharaoh. Learned leadership from a great Pharaoh. Ran away from it all. If you don't know the story, you should totally read it. It's great. It's just such a great read. It's in the beginning of the Bible. And so he runs away, and God says, hey, I want you to take your talent as a great leader. I want you to go back, and you're going to let the people go. He got nervous. He's like, how am I going to do that? Great. Okay. But God's like, I'm going to go with you when you go do this. And he tells him, throw down the rod, and just tries to prove a point. Hey, I'm going to be with you when you go to use these talents that you have, and you're the great leader you are. I'm going to be with you. And you know the story. He goes back, and the Israelites who are slaves to the Egyptians, they're set free. It's a phenomenal read. And here's this guy using the talents he had, makes a big difference, and history's changed. It was a small act. We read it in this magnitude, this big thing, right? But it was a small act that he was doing, and it transpires over history to be a big story. Small acts over time become very large because they're compounding. You have Noah, where God said, hey, I want you to build a boat. Noah did not build a boat before. He wasn't a boat builder. But he's possessed the ability of great faith, and he said, okay, I'll build a boat. It took him a long time to do it. And we today learn from the story of Noah because of a man that had great faith, that had talents of figuring things out, which is a real talent, and I hope your children are blessed with that talent, figure it out. I hope my children are, because it's magical. You can just say, hey, go figure it out. It's amazing. It really is. I have a few that cannot, and you're just like, oh my gosh, it's a bagel. Just put it in a toaster, hit down. It'll pop up, and you butter it, okay? We got a few that are like, what do I do now? I think they're just messing with me. I think they know. They just know that this is like a hilarious game. I know, but as long as I pretend I don't, Dad makes my breakfast. I'm not doing it anymore. Thanks for helping me work that one out. But you have Noah who figured it out. And it's a tremendous story of faith that we can lean on and go, okay, God has got great things for even for me when he calls you to do great things. We got Mary, who we just read about. Mary, you're going to be a mom to God's kid. Yikes! But she said yes. She's like, I can do that. What is God calling you to do to start in the new year? And it doesn't need to be huge. It's just little things add up. One of my favorite verses is found in Zechariah, old book in the Bible, Old Testament Jewish scriptures, Zechariah chapter 4, verse 10. Do not despise these small beginnings, the small things where it started small. I attached myself to this early on in church when we started it because, man, talk about starting small. We knew no one. So when one family said yes, we're like, hey, we're in. We're not going to be embarrassed by, we just got one family. It was like, no. Do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. He likes to see faith being executed. He likes to see the step of faith. I'm going to step in and see where this goes. What is he asking you to step into? And you don't know where it goes. But he's like, hey, if you just take a step of faith, I promise you I'm going to smile at you. But we live in Western culture where we're about results. And we want the end. We want to know, is this a good return on my investment? And that's sound advice most of the time. But sometimes when it comes with God, he's not about that at the first. He's wanting to see if you're going to take a step of faith. And continue to do the step of faith over and over again. Because all these stories I read about the first step that these men and women took, but the result was they continued to do the steps of faith over and over again. It became a habit for them. May these be things that you make habits in your life every week, asking yourself, what's God telling me to get rid of, and what's God telling me to start? If you do that every week, every day, oh my goodness, you're going to have the life that you have dreamt of. And as you roll into the new year, may you grab a principle that Paul used in what is been labeled as the happy book in the Bible, the most happiest book in the Bible. Do you know there's such a thing? Like as people have studied it, they're like, it has the most encouragement in the Bible. So if you're struggling and you need to have a smile, you need to read the book that Paul authored, Philippians. It's the happy book. You need to read it. And you got to understand this, that when he wrote this, he was in jail, okay? So like when he's talking about being happy, he's like, I have all the reasons to not be happy. I'm in chains. I'm guilty of like just talking about Jesus to people. I'm in house arrest. But I'm telling you, I'm writing to you, be happy. But when he's writing in Philippians chapter 1, He gives a lot of accounts. He starts like, hey, I'm writing to tell you what's going on, that I'm in prison. And then he goes on and just talks about consider good joy, pure joy, just a lot of happy stuff. He just begins to say these things. He actually never tells people why he's in jail. He starts his letter to this group of you. I'm telling you how I'm doing, just to let you know I'm in jail. And he never tells them why. He just goes on and is like, hey, life's pretty good. Life's great. And he goes on, like somebody must have sent a letter to him going, hey, there's some people out there talking crap about you. They're saying some bad things about you. They're saying that you aren't who you said you are, and Jesus isn't who he is. And so they write this, and so we jump in the middle of this conversation, him in jail, and he writes in Philippians chapter 1, verse 15, it is true that some people preach Christ out of envy and rivalry, but others do out of goodwill. The latter do so out of love, knowing that I am put here for the defense of the gospel. The former preach Christ out of selfish ambitions, not sincerely, supposing that they can stir up trouble for me while I'm in chains. So he sets up what I just said, right? There's people out there talking crap. Some people are talking all wrong. It's bad. It's not good. Some are saying it's good. And this popped out at me the other day when I was reading this. He goes, but what does it matter? But what does it matter anyways? I ain't getting worked up about it. I'm not getting worked up about it. The important thing is that in every way, whether from false motives or true, Christ is preached. And because of this, I rejoice. Yes, I will continue to rejoice, for I know that through my prayers and God's provision of the Spirit of Jesus Christ what has happened to me will turn out for my deliverance. See how happy he is? Like, if you had a coworker like that, you'd be like, no, this is the worst day ever. You want to poke him in the eye. But Paul's like, it's good. I mean, I might be in chains. Might be people out there talking about a lot of bad stuff about me. What does it matter? May you grab those 4 words. What does it matter? And remind yourself, there's a whole lot of things that you've put on your plate this past year that don't really matter. It's not for you to care about, to get worked up about. Our job is to be the good news and to point people to Jesus. Paul doesn't get in here and go, yes, well, I'm in chains and these people are doing this. Can you believe that mess out there? I was checking Facebook the other day, and there's a whole bunch of people out there talking crap about this certain person. I'm just going to give my 2 cents in here, and they... No, he doesn't do any of that. Paul simply says, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Why does it matter? Jesus is still getting talked about. Jesus is on the throne. It's all going to still happen. I'm not going to tell you about my situation, how bad it is. I'm not going to tell you I got it worse than you. I'm just like, this doesn't matter. What are things in your life that maybe you've put on your plate this past year that you're like, oh, it really doesn't matter? The opinion somebody holds about somebody. As we get into a new political year and people are going to share their opinions, does it really matter? Does it matter? I mean, I'll let you answer it. I mean, we act like that's life and death, but does it matter? At the end of the day, what matters in this next decade, the next year, is how many people we point to Jesus. And will people look at you and me and go, that person carries the good news in every situation? And Paul says it. He goes, if I have everything, I'm happy. If I have nothing, I'm happy. Because of the good news. May you walk into the new year knowing what you're going to do with it. Because I have a feeling God's going to ask us at some point, when He stands before me, He's going to go, what did you do with the life I gave you? What did you do with the new decade coming up? The new year. It is a choice. It is a decision. And each one of us have to choose to do something. May we just not choose to put our hands underneath our butts and just sit on them and go, I'm too afraid to do anything. May we start something new that might change your world and the world. Will we pick up a Bible for the first time and read it? I don't know what it is for you and what God's calling you to do and to not do, but I know He's talking to you, and it's your job to do something about it. I'll end with what Paul says in Philippians 1:27, and then I'm going to pray. Whatever happens, conduct yourself in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. Then, whether I come and see you or only hear about you in my absence, I will know that you stand firm in one spirit, striving together as one for the faith of the gospel. And he's saying, if I get out of jail, great. If I don't, what does it matter? Whatever happens, conduct yourself in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. Maybe that's your phrase for the year. I like theming out my years. What's my theme for the year? My statement. My statement this going into the new year, as I've thought about this and everything, is a restful life. I thought about my last year, and maybe I ran a little too hard. Maybe I went from one event in one city, one too much. Maybe I missed a little bit with my family and my kids and with you. Just rest a little bit, Scott. Pause. That's for me. That's not yours. Maybe to you, God's saying, get up and go. Let's get after it. God will call each one of us uniquely because we're uniquely made. And whatever it is, when we point people to Jesus, and it's going to be a great year and a great decade. I can't wait to see what Jesus does with your life, my life, and Unlock Church. Would you pray? Jesus, I ask that right now you're speaking very directly to all of us.